Good morning, boys and girls. As I promised yesterday, after doing our sink and float experiment, that we were going to take a look at our ocean book. Oh man, I just love the ocean. I think the ocean is so neat because everything is really colorful and beautiful, and there's so many different animals that live in the ocean. Before we start, I want you to close your eyes and think to yourself, what would life be like if you lived in the ocean? You would never have to drive anywhere. You would never have to take a boat anywhere. You could swim everywhere you wanted to go, right? Can you imagine it? That's amazing. Open up your eyes and think about what it would be like to live in the ocean. And what kind of animal would you be? Would you live in the deep, 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 dark ocean where there's no light? Or would you live in the top of the ocean, kind of like a dolphin or a whale, where you can quickly come up and get some fresh air if you wanted to still breathe air? So many different things to think about, huh? So let's take a look at our ocean book. We certainly can't read the whole book in one sitting. It's got a lot of information in it, and if we were at school, I'd be asking you which page you would want to learn about. But since we can't really do that, the one thing I want to show you is how many oceans there actually are. So there are 5 oceans: the Arctic Ocean, the North Pacific, the Indian Ocean, the Southern Ocean, and the Atlantic Ocean. And if I show you the map here, you can kind of see where they are. So this is the Arctic Ocean. Remember, that is where the penguins live, and the Arctic fox lives, and the polar bears live, and it's very, very, very cold, freezing cold. In the Atlantic Ocean, in the North Atlantic Ocean, is where the Titanic sank. I know you guys love the Titanic and love to talk about the Titanic, and so in the North Atlantic Ocean, that's where the Titanic sank. And some parts of the Atlantic Ocean can be kind of warm. Right here by Mexico, it can be a little bit warm. And then over here we have the Pacific Ocean, and up here it's a little bit cooler, but down here it's really nice and toasty warm, down by South America. This is the Indian Ocean over here, okay? And this ocean kind of just floats in this area here. It's probably the smallest of all of the oceans. I'm not 100% sure if the Arctic Ocean is smaller. And then over here, this is called the North Pacific Ocean, but the Pacific Ocean goes around, right? Because the Earth is a ball, it's a sphere, right? And then the Southern Ocean is down here, and it's interesting because the Southern Ocean is close to Antarctica, and when I think of the South, I think of warm, but Antarctica is not warm, is it? It's very, very, very cold. That's where we saw all of the penguins on that video that we saw. They were huddled all together. So I can't even imagine. I could never be a penguin. No way. First of all, I don't like the cold weather, and second of all, swimming in cold water sounds yucky to me. I take hottest showers you can possibly take. So anyway, these are all of the oceans, and it kind of tells us a little bit. It says, the oceans of the world are home to millions of amazing animals, from the largest on Earth to some of the tiniest, too small for us to even see with the naked eye. That means you can't see it with your eyes. You'd have to look with a microscope. Very interesting. All these living things need to eat to stay alive, and some make their own food using the sun's energy. Some eat plants, and many try to eat one another. That's something you need to consider when you choose to become an ocean animal. Are you going to be a big animal so nobody eats you? Or are you going to be a small animal and it's easier to feed yourself, but you have to watch out so you don't get eaten? The list of who eats who is called a food chain, and most food chains start with things that make their own food using the sun's energy. They are known as producers and include seaweed and algae called phytoplankton, which drift in the ocean. So those living plants create their own food and feed themselves from the sun, and then animals can eat the seaweed and the phytoplankton to survive. Hey, this looks like a puffin. We learned about puffins in the Arctic part of our unit. Next in a food chain is what is known as a secondary consumer. It might be a carnivore or an omnivore. A carnivore is an animal that eats only meat, and an omnivore is an animal that eats veggies and meat. Most of us are omnivores. Some of you might be herbivores where you only eat plants and no meat, and that's okay. Any of those choices are totally fine, but most of us are omnivores. Puffins are secondary consumers that eat fish and small sea animals. So very interesting. At the top of a food chain, so maybe if you were thinking you wanted to be at the top of a food chain, you might want to be the swordfish. Take a look at that guy. Oh, it's a bad picture. He's got a big pointy sword. I'd be afraid of him, right? He has no predators because he's so fast and he's so fierce. That's interesting. So if we kind of take a look at this page, one other thing that's beautiful about the ocean is coral. Coral is so beautiful. It is very, very colorful, and it feeds a lot of plants. If you've seen Finding Nemo, you know that Nemo lives in a kind of coral. Corals are alive plants, so they move and they kind of feed off of the sun's rays. And let's see a little bit about them. Coral polyps reproduce in two ways. The first way is by producing eggs. The females release the eggs into the water. Tiny larvae hatch from the eggs and drift on the water. Soon they land on hard surfaces such as rocks, and they attach themselves there. Coral polyps also reproduce by splitting in half. They divide again and again until there is an entire colony of polyps. The larvae grow into... Oh, I missed it. I went backwards. Oh, that's okay. So first the larvae grow into polyps, and then the polyps can reproduce. Now, boys and girls, the coral reef actually has been in danger. The great coral reef has been in danger because the waters were getting too cold for the coral to survive. They needed nice, warm, cozy water to survive. Now, today, I thought it would be kind of fun if you took a piece of paper and drew a picture of the kind of animal that you would like to be in the ocean. Are you going to be an animal that lives in coral like Nemo? Are you going to be a great white shark? Are you going to be a whale or a dolphin? Or are you going to be a puffin who lives mostly on land but still swims in the ocean and enjoys the ocean water? Maybe you're going to be a polar bear. I'm not sure. I want to know what kind of animal you're going to be. And as an extra challenge, I'd like you to write a couple sentences about your animal. So if Mrs. Tischer was choosing to be a whale, I would say, I want to be a whale because they are the biggest animal in the ocean. I would feel safe as a whale because no one could eat me. That's what I would write. I can't wait to see your picture. Post that to Seesaw when you're done. And we will continue learning more about the ocean next week.